All right, so in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at why more people don't switch over to Linux. In my opinion, one of the biggest problems with Linux and the reason that a lot of people don't use it on a day-to-day basis is because there is no video editing on it. There's 3 applications that we're going to take a look at today for doing screencasts. I do realize that videotaping with a video recorder and doing editing in that way is a little bit different. And so some of these programs may yield themselves a little bit better in that environment than others. But I guess my biggest complaint about Linux, and I am a huge Linux fan, and I actually I've got a ThinkPad X1 Pro that I use for or Extreme that I use on a day-to-day basis. I've also got a MacBook Pro, and I constantly have to go back to the MacBook Pro for doing video editing because you'll see in this video we're going to use 3 of the top video editing programs in Linux. We are going to insert a screencast that I did. Right now I'm using OBS. I've got it set for a 1920 by 1080, the 1080p size screen. This notebook does have a pretty high resolution screen on it, but so I'm only recording a certain portion of the screen. The other problem that we have here is I had to do this because if I record the entire desktop, I end up with a really bad resolution when I try to zoom in and do things. So I had to kind of change the location, and as a result, what I'm looking at is very, very tiny. So you'll have to bear with me. So we have we're going to start with Shotcut here. What we're going to do to get the file in is we're going to go up here. We've got a project started, and we're going to go to Open File. And then this is off the screen because my screen's too small. And so I'm just going to come in here and choose a file that we recorded earlier, just so it's a little bit more. All right, so this is a video that I have that we're going to zoom in and move around and see if we can figure out how this works. All right, so we have the video clip. We have our timeline is right here, and we want to add a something to it. So what we've got to do is we have to go to let's see here for filters. We have to come up here to add a filter. We're going to scroll down here to size and position. And for those that don't know what a keyframe is, in any video editing software, a keyframe is a position that you are going to do something. You're basically saying that at this position, I want to add a filter, I want to change the color, I want to resize and move the video, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be resizing the video and moving it a little bit. So the first problem with this program, and this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. So when you drop a keyframe in here, what it does is that keyframe takes up the entire video clip. And so in order for me to get it where I want it, I have to actually grab it and put the starting position. Then I have to scroll all the way over here to the right and get the other side, or I have to make my video clip really, really small so that I can see the other end. Then I got to grab the other end and I got to pull it all the way back over here and put it there. And so now what I want to do right off the bat is I want to zoom in on this little green square of the program. And so in this keyframe, I have things up here that I can work with. One is you'll notice a little dot. This little dot looks like a really cool thing for moving around. The problem is that if I were to do what I'm about to do, because I also need to scale this, so we're going to grab the edge of this and we're going to scale it up. And then we're going to move this back down here, and then we're going to grab. All right, so here's the first thing. Notice that I cannot scale this any longer because the corner is off the screen. I can drag this down here to some extent, and I can pull this thing up here. But at some point, I am going to not be able to get. So now you'll notice that I have put the little dot is all the way down here on the bottom, so I'm going to drop it right there, and now I'm going to size it again. So we're just going to grab this and move it a little bit more. At this point, I'm screwed. The reason's because the only way to move this stupid video inside of this window is to have that stupid little dot that sits in the middle of the key of the image. And so I can't move anymore. I can't resize it anymore because my size things have popped off the edges. So this thing won't move. The only way to move it now is to come over here and to set positions. I can't click and scroll. I don't know if this, no. So I can't, what does this do? Use keyframes for this, no. So the problem is I have to literally come over here and say this is the position. So I want to move it to the right. I don't really know, is this my X and Y, I guess. So I want to move it up a little bit. So let's move this to 0. That moves it to the top. So now I have to try to figure out what this is. So we're going to say 1. We'll say 5. So it's moving down. And so if I want to move it to the left, I'd come over here and change this to 1000. You get the point. This is a pain in the butt. The other problem is that now that I have this keyframe in here, what is going to happen is this is going to be, if I play the video, that is going to be the video and what it looks like. But now when I get to the edge of this clip, so let's play this and watch what happens. So what's going to happen is when it gets to the edge of this keyframe, instead of staying where it's at, it's going to pop back to its original state. And so what I really normally would want to do with keyframes and working with a video is I would like to have it sit in one particular place and then not move from that scale and rotation or whatever it is I've done until I add another keyframe to tell it to do something different. But in this application, what you have to do is you literally have to continue to add keyframes on top of each other. So as an example, now I want to move somewhere else. So I'm going to add another keyframe. I again have to come all the way down here and pick all this crap again. It then throws it on the entire clip again. I then have to come over here. I have to drag this back to some unknown position because I don't know exactly where I'm going to want to change anything. I also cannot move this off the top of the other keyframe because if I do, then you're going to get a pop out and a zoom back in. So I have to have this overlap, but the problem is I can't see the other keyframe anymore. And so I just kind of have to guess at where it is. And so now I'm going to pull this guy back over here, and now we're going to do something different. So now we're going to come, and because I have no way of moving, that's interesting. So one thing to note, it has actually recentered and looks like it has cut my cropped my image. So now it's reset everything over here. We're back to the original size of the video, although that's not what we're viewing. Here's the thing, we're not going to waste a lot of time with this program. It sucks. There is nothing productive about this application. I'm not knocking the programmer because he obviously has some skill to be able to do what he's done, but the user interface is terrible, and working with keyframes is the craziest thing. I've been editing videos for years and years, and I have never seen anything this backwards in my entire life. So we're just going to take Shotcut and we're going to throw it out because it, to me, is the least usable of all of these programs. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up sound and video. We're going to open up OpenShot, which is another application. You'll also notice these applications have opened up the size that they were the last time I opened them, which is very cool. You'll see why I say that in just a moment. So here we're going to again come up here, and this time we have an import file, and we're going to come down here to videos, and we're just going to pick one of these guys here, and now we're going to drag that and put it on the timeline. And this, so OpenShot is not a terrible program, but here's the craziness. So I want to keep the size that it is for a moment while the video opens up, and then somewhere in here we want to zoom in on it. And so in order to do that, I have to put a keyframe here to keep it this size. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have to come down here and we're going to go to location X, Y, and scale X, Y. And we have to add keyframes for all of that stuff. And so we're going to right click, insert keyframes. And why they don't turn blue here, I don't know. But I guess because it's the beginning of the video, but I just don't know. And so now we're going to scroll over here to where we want to do another keyframe. So now I want to insert another keyframe. To do that and keep everything in the current position, because I cannot put a keyframe over here and start zooming yet, because if I do, then everything between the first keyframe and the second keyframe, it's going to slowly start zooming out to wherever I want to be. And that's not what we want to do. And so we're going to go ahead, we got to add our keyframes. Now you'll notice that they are turning green to let us know that we have keyframes. We have to lock all 4 of them, because if we don't, then any changes that we make over here are going to, one of those positions may start to move. And so now I'm going to move forward just a tad bit. You'll notice a tiny little green dot right there to let me know there's a keyframe. I cannot delete that keyframe like that. If I want to delete the keyframe, I have to literally come over here and right click every one of these and tell it to remove, and it is the craziest thing you've ever seen, because it's not even consistent doing that. So now I've moved to my new location, and so we want to zoom. So the first thing we're going to do is we're coming down here, we're going to change this to 3, change this to 3 so we keep the aspect ratio. And then I want to move, we're going to slide this over this way just a little bit, and we're going to slide it down to here. And that's where we want that. And so now what is going to happen is we're going to stay that big size. Then at this keyframe, between this keyframe and the one we just created, it's going to slowly move out to being in this position. So now I want to move forward just a little bit more. And again, I don't want it to move. I want to keep this location, and then I'm going to move it again in a minute. So I again have to create another set of keyframes to keep it in the position that it's in. Then we move forward just a little bit, and now I want to zoom it again. So now I again have to create new keyframes. So, and you don't necessarily, it's going to automatically create the keyframes for you when you start moving, or if you just start dragging and changing things. But the problem is depending on your next set of keyframes, if you don't lock everything where you have it, you potentially are going to have the thing moving in a direction that just doesn't make any sense at all. And so now we're just going to move it this way a little bit, and we'll change the zoom to 2. So the point here, it works. But if you had to edit a video like you're watching right now, it will drive you insane, because it's way too much work to set all these keyframes and deal with all this. So at this point, though, we do get the activity, everything's moving the way we want it to, and then it scrolls, moves over. So everything works perfect. It does export the video really quickly. It does what it's supposed to do, but having to set all these keyframes over and over is just ridiculous. So now we're going to go to the most functional, which is Kdenlive. You'll notice that this little thing opens this size every single time I open it. I don't know why it does that. It's kind of driving me crazy. All right, so the first thing here is you cannot actually add a clip. And so if I come up here to File, or actually I can't do that. If I right click here and tell it to add a clip, and I go into my videos folder, you'll notice nothing shows up. It acts like there's no video files in there. And if I tell it to show me all files in the folder, it still doesn't show anything. So I have not been able to figure out what I'm doing wrong here or what is wrong. But the only way that I have found to get that to work is to open up the File Explorer and to click and drag and drop the video clip up here. And that seems to do the trick. All right, so now we have the video. We need to drag the video and put it into one of our fields here. And one thing that I did notice is if you drop this video with your mouse over here on the edge, it won't add the video. You have to drop it out here and then drag it to where you want it. It's kind of crazy. All right, so now we've got the video. Another thing here that's interesting is you'll notice I have to move my mouse to this dead space here. There's a bar there that I can use to drag this down. This one seems to be the edge of this control here, so it's okay, but the one down here you kind of have to point and just randomly put your mouse somewhere until you get the double arrows to resize it. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to add a keyframe. So we're going to come up here, we're going to look at crop and transformation, looks like a good candidate, and then we're going to go to position and zoom, and then we're going to drop that on our clip. It can go anywhere on the clip. What it ends up doing, and you'll notice here there's a dead space here that you point to get the thing to turn. So what it ends up doing is it puts this keyframe editor up here. Now this thing it's not terrible, but it's not great in a number of ways. So the first problem is we still have the situation where I'm this size, I'm going to scroll over to here, and now I'm going to add a keyframe. So to add actually, I don't know why it didn't move. I got to drag that little, come on. So I got to drag, I don't know why it's not dragging the little arrow down here at the bottom, because that's what we want to move. Wow, okay. All right, so now we have a keyframe that we just added over here. At that keyframe, I don't want to change a single thing. I'm going to leave it just like it is. Then we're going to move over, just because this has the same issue as the other. It's going to keep whatever it is up to that point, and then it's going to move. Oh, my video's playing there. All right, so now we're going to move over here. See the video, the little scrub bar thing down here. I wonder if I can just move it down here. All right, we can do it down here too. So right here, I want to add another keyframe, but this time we're going to change the scale to 300. And then, well, that's 3,000. We don't really want 3,000. All right, and then I want to move it over here to the left. Well, notice the same problem as a minute ago. I cannot move it because that little stupid center thing that I'm supposed to move everything with is gone. So the only way that I can move it is either click and type in a number, or if I click on the X, I can drag to the left, but I have to continue to do this because I don't have enough screen to get it to move everywhere. So as you can tell, this would be a huge pain in the butt if I had to edit videos this way, but we'll do it anyway for this video. And then we want to move up, so we'll go up. All right, so we'll say that's where we want to go from there. Then, so from here, we're going to be there, and here we start to transition up to what we just did. And so now I'm going to go here, and we want to add another keyframe, but we're not going to make any changes to it, because if we do, then everything between here and here, it's going to start to move in that direction. So first I want to lock it where it's at. Then we're going to click over here, and we're going to add another keyframe, and then this keyframe is where we're going to actually change the zoom. So we're going to change the zoom down to 200. And we're going to move the X back over here, and then we're going to move the Y back down here, and this is also cool too, because I can actually come down here and click these keyframes. You have to wait for it to turn red, but you can click these keyframes and change them. And so now, if you watch this when it runs, it's going to stay where it's at. It's going to zoom up. It's going to stay where it's at, and then it's going to zoom and move again. So it zooms out to where it was. I guess I didn't move the X and Y. I just changed the zoom. No, I did move the X and Y. So that didn't do exactly what I was expecting it to do. So this zooms up and puts it in the position that it's at. Or yeah, so what it's doing, I guess, it just looks like it zoomed. Well, okay, I know what it's doing. So it zoomed out and moved at the same time, so it doesn't look like it did what I wanted it to, but it really did. So that's how you set the keyframes in Kdenlive. This is 1,000 times better than either of the other two programs, but it's still a far cry from what you're about to see now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these the screencasting that I just did on Linux, and we're going to put it onto a Mac, and we're going to process this video you're watching on YouTube on the MacBook and see how we do it in Screenflow. So now I'm on a Mac and I'm using Screenflow, and again, it's 2019, March 2019. But I'm using Screenflow. I have pulled the video in that I recorded on the Linux box into Screenflow on my Mac, and I'm editing it. Now this video you're watching, the whole video has been processed in Screenflow, but I'm going to very quickly show you how this works. So I import the video clip into Screenflow. I can click on these guys and scale, and it works pretty much like it does in the other applications. However, on my video tab over here on the right, I have a scale option here, and I can scale this thing any way I want, and it just does it at whatever magnification I want to go to. So we'll stop right there. And now I'm going to start playing the video across. And so now let's say at this particular point, I want to zoom in on a particular part of the application. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command K, which is going to insert a keyframe. And you'll notice down here in my timeline, I've got a little yellow bar. It's kind of hard to see, but I'll zoom in on it when I do this so you can see it. But it puts a little yellow bar to let me know a keyframe's there. Now that keyframe, the width of that keyframe is how long it's going to take for it to go from one thing to the next. I don't have to drop 2 keyframes for every time I want to move it, because it's going to do whatever it's supposed to do inside that keyframe, and then it's going to stay just like that until I do something different. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to change the scale. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and then I'm going to pretend this is the section that we were looking at. And so now we've zoomed in on this particular area. I'm going to come over here, and now let's say we decided we're going to go up to the file menu. So I'm going to hit Command K. I'm going to pull this thing up here to the file menu. Maybe I want to zoom in just a little bit more so it's a little easier to see. And so now we're up here in the file menu. And so now I'm going to go over to wherever it is that I'm going next. I'm going to hit Command K. And then I want to zoom back out so we can see the whole application again. So we're going to drag that thing over there, and we'll get this thing zoomed out to where we can see it. And the other thing is I don't have my mouse hooked up at the moment, but you can use your mouse wheel to actually do the scaling. So I can move it with my mouse, and I can click anywhere on here to move this thing around. I'm not having to click this stupid thing in the middle, and then when it gets off the screen, I can't do anything anymore. So it's a very simple scale to change the zoom, and a very simple click and drag to change your X and Y locations. And I'm only having to insert 1 keyframe for each movement. And so then when we go in here and actually play it, you'll notice that it scrolls in, and then it turns around and goes down here to the bottom. So we'll mute the sound on it. So we'll go down here, and then in a second it's going to scroll up to the file. So now we zoom into the file, and then in just a second we'll zoom back out. And so as you can see, and I didn't mention it in the last video because I forgot, the Kdenlive is the best video editor in Linux, in my opinion, at this particular point. However, having said that, Kdenlive is good for editing, but it absolutely is horrendous for exporting the video to upload to YouTube. It takes it forever. It ends up running my computer at 400% on, or 300% on my CPUs, gets really, really hot, and it takes forever to export the video. So, while Kdenlive is one of the better editors in Linux, it comes nowhere close to this program on Mac. and it takes forever to export the thing. So it's, that's kind of the sad state of affairs of where we are in Linux. And I really do think that, if somebody would get a really good solid video editor, and we've got obviously have talented people working over there, why they don't get together and try to come up with something that can compete with something like this. This still is not Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere, but it's still a ton better than what you can get over on the Linux box. And on my Mac, I can run Final Cut Pro and Premiere. So I've got many different options. But for doing screencasting, it's really almost impossible for you to beat what you're capable of doing in ScreenFlow.